podcast, videocast, and another great episode. So again, thank you to the feedback from everyone from last week. And yeah, so pleased many of you have now been able to see it on video as well. But do remember you can get it as a podcast each week through your normal sources for getting podcasts. What I wanted to look at today, I really wanted to look at opening the sale or just opening a dialogue. And I think this is an area where a lot of people get it wrong. So I think it's really key that we can actually look at that. Now, many of you know that I'm a huge advocate of using LinkedIn now really as the new cold calling tool, which it really is. So it's about creating those relationships. So it doesn't matter if we're looking at telesales or we're looking at networking meeting, be those on Zoom or be those actually physical now. We're starting to see one or two physical meetings now taking place, and also now looking to be able to use LinkedIn in terms of you being able to reach out and message somebody. So what I thought I'd do today is just going to take you through how do you make that first step? What's that first step all about? So I thought, right, let's just look at LinkedIn as a first point. So with LinkedIn, you have the opportunity to connect with somebody. So I've spoken many times before about prospecting, making sure you get the right person, how to do your searches. But when you're using LinkedIn, you really, again, like any relationship, you really only have a first chance to make that first impression. So you only get that one chance. So when you look at that one chance, let's look at LinkedIn. So you want to send that first message out in LinkedIn. So that first message should be, hi, make it personalized. Don't necessarily just press, add a connection. Let's be a bit more personal about it. So hi, whoever the person's name is, saw we had some shared connections, thought it would be good to connect on LinkedIn. That's one approach. Another approach might be, love to be able to connect with you on LinkedIn. I'm growing my network in a particular sector. So that might be one as well. But the key thing here is use few words, but actually just make sure you're reaching out. And again, it's that human touch that's all important. So again, make sure you do that. So it's reaching out to somebody. When they connect with you and they connect, then send them a thank you for connecting. So thank you for connecting, it's great. I'm going to look out for your posts on LinkedIn. I'll certainly look to share where I can on my network. So really push back to a person that you're going to try and help them. You want to engage with them. Now, it's part of the sales process, and it's important that you start to follow through with that, but you do need to be seen as giving, because when you're in the sales process, people buy from people. People don't buy from you straight away. That is not going to happen. So when we look at the cold call, and we've spoken about cold calling on telesales in the past, similar process in terms of the decision maker, but today I really just want to be focusing on getting that first connection with somebody somehow. You might even connect with somebody on Facebook. That's a potential, and you could do that. You could join a group on Facebook that is it's particular to the sector you're in. So again, you could join that and you could reach out to somebody and say, again, thought it would be good to connect on Facebook. Depends how you're using Facebook. For me, LinkedIn is the platform to be using for B2B, but again, you could use Facebook. You could as well reach out to somebody. You could reach out to them just with an email. So an email could be a way, but if you're going to use email in that first impression, you've got to be really careful how you do that. So sending out that first email has got to be a very soft email. It's got to be a way that you can then follow back up on if you need to. Lots of people will use e-newsletters as well, and for me in particular within our business, we use e-newsletters all of the time, and again, that's a good way to connect with people. And again, if you're watching this, you will have seen that I sent out an email last week, I sent out an e-newsletter, and actually on that, I was begging people to unsubscribe. So I was saying, please unsubscribe. The reason I wanted to do that is if people don't want to engage with me, let me know, unsubscribe, and then I'm not going to bother them again. Now, for me, that's quite radical, but it's the way that it should be. You don't want to be pestering somebody who's really not interested. You want to whittle that down as well. So for me, you can start to use things like technology. You can use e-newsletters. We use HubSpot. We're a HubSpot partner, so we use that a lot. So people can unsubscribe. They can unsubscribe fully. They can unsubscribe from receiving marketing emails. There are different ways that people can unsubscribe. But if somebody is unsubscribed, then actually it means the people you are working with on that list who want to be on that list, they become much higher prospects. So there's a higher probability of them doing something with you now, tomorrow, next month, in the future. So it is important that you can look at that as well. So again, that can be a first step, a first touch with somebody. So in terms of that, if you're going to use e-newsletters, make sure they're full of content. And we're going to look at that in future weeks as well. I'm actually going to take you through how to build a really good newsletter and actually share with you some of that content. So again, with these first impressions when you're there, always be looking to give to people, give them something. So for me, am I using the podcast for promotion? Absolutely. Am I looking to use it to impart some of my skills and knowledge? Of course I am. But I'm also looking to build relationships so people can hear me, people can see me, they can hear what I am saying. So in terms of one of the key things that if you look at in that first impression, that there are 3 ways that people make that first impression. It's what you look like, what you sound like, and the words that you use. So if we look in the different scenarios we've spoken about today, if you look at that first impression, so if you're watching on video, you can see what I look like. And actually with that you go, okay, looks professional, looks smart. You will make some kind of informed decision from that. If you're listening on podcast, you can only go on the way that I sound and the words that I use. And that's really important as well. And I think, I use this analogy lots of times. In the dating game, there can be times when you're in a pub or a club, and obviously we're not too much of that at the moment, but if you think about that more in the past, and you might see somebody across the room and you go, oh, they look really nice. You walk up to them, they might not sound the way you thought they sound. They certainly might not use the words you would expect. So again, you create an additional level of information about that person. And it's very much the same when people are on the telephone. I think we've all experienced, we speak to somebody on the telephone, we don't know what they look like, and then when we meet them, they don't quite look the way that we thought they would look like based on how they sounded on the phone. So again, that whole first impressions are there. So coming back into people buy from people, again, if you're using LinkedIn, people are going to look at what do you look like. And it amazes me how many people will use a social type photograph that they've taken from their Facebook profile and they put that in there. It's the wrong platform, it's the wrong image. And again, for me, I think you can't go wrong with a really strong black and white photo. You can take a photo with a white background, you can turn it into grayscale. It looks smart, it looks professional. And again, it's helpful from that way as well. You can put a color photo on if you wish as well. I find, personally, black and whites look really good. But again, when you're actually using content within your feed on your LinkedIn and you've got images of yourself, take a little bit of time just to make sure they're right. You don't need to Photoshop it, just make sure that they are right, because it's creating that first impression. Again, the words that you're using in your post, the images that you're using, and equally the things that you're commenting on and you're sharing. People look at that from a first impression. So if you're starting out in business and you're starting out, as many people are now, they're going self-employed. COVID has helped people, or actually it's made people have to go down this route. First impressions count. So make sure the way you look, the way you sound is correct, because it's about those first impressions. And so for me, really, in this podcast today is first impressions count. So if you're using LinkedIn, I've given you a few tips on how to use that. Telephone, yes, you can go back on previous podcasts, you can listen to that whole way of using the telephone. But also if you're going to use e-newsletters, you're going to use technology for that. How do they look? How does it sound? What are the words that are being used in there? Because it's the first impression. And because we're sending out emails as well, again, it could be that first impression. You need to be able to create the impression of who you are, either you personally, you as the business, or the two put together. And for me, that's really, really important about those whole first impressions. So really hope you've enjoyed today's podcast, videocast. Hope you've enjoyed that. I did say about some special news. Special news now on a Thursday as well. Going to be bringing you another podcast stroke videocast. Doing it with a fantastic co-presenter, the wonderful Gail Acaster, and we've been working together now on the Business Owners podcast. So if you're a business owner, make sure you tune into that. Gail and I really recognise there's a bit of a gap there for business owners, so we want to be able to bring some great interviews and some really good content to that as well. So you'll see Gail and I interviewing some great people as well in terms of that. People who are either starting out, are partway through, or who've built amazing businesses, but from a business owner's perspective, to bring you some great tips and ideas as well. But do remember, this podcast, the B2B Sales Pro podcast, videocast, is going to be with you every Tuesday, very much with me just giving you skills, tips and ideas, and everything's evolving all of the time. But do tune in as well on a Thursday for the Business Owner podcast, and you'll be able to find that as well. So trying to bring you as much content as possible and just bring you great ideas, give you tips and ideas that you can go and use within your sales and also within your business. Hope you've enjoyed this and look forward to catching up with you next week.